Tonight, a trade war with the Americans. Canada has a long list of retaliatory targets amid little hope of stopping President Trump.
I'm very pessimistic that by Tuesday we can get out.
Experts are puzzled.
I think it is very hard to find any kind of economic rationale for the tariffs on Mexico and Canada.
And those on both sides of the border wondering what's next.
You never know how much it's going to go up or what it's going to impact, right?
Plus, a growing threat to Canadian democracy.
But you can imagine what a foreign government could do, or what a really nefarious actor could do.
How concern over disinformation is spiking, and the role that artificial intelligence is playing in all the chaos. And a tale of two groundhogs.
3, 2, 1.
What this year's pint-sized prognosticators have to say about the rest of winter.
We will have an early spring.
CTV National News with Heather Butts. Reporting tonight, Todd Vanderhayden.
Good evening. U.S. President Donald Trump once again taking aim at Canada tonight as a trade war heats up between our two countries. Here's what he had to say just a short time ago.
I love the people of Canada. I disagree with the leadership of Canada, and something's going to happen there. But if they want to play the game, I don't mind. We can play the game all they want. I'm speaking with Prime Minister Trudeau tomorrow morning.
That comes as a defiant Trudeau government is refusing to bow down, along with Canadian premiers and Canadians nationwide, promising to hit the United States with $30 billion worth of counter tariffs as of this Tuesday, another $125 billion in further tariffs to follow 3 weeks later. Dozens of American imports will be targeted, including things like dairy, poultry, orange juice, alcohol, home appliances, cosmetics. Those would all become more expensive. We have extensive coverage tonight on this crisis, starting with CTV's Geneviève Beauchemin in Washington, D.C.
Tariffs mark a new era in North America, dealing a blow to historic economic partnerships.
Canada's a very bad abuser also.
President Donald Trump took to social media, musing the neighbors to the north should become a cherished 51st state and avoid tariffs. Republicans insist Canada must crack down on fentanyl crossing the border if it wants the levies lifted.
It's minuscule right now.
But it's growing. It's growing, and when they have a porous border and they don't seem very concerned at all, and by the way, I heard the clip earlier, Justin Trudeau sort of lecturing Americans. My advice to him is he probably ought to talk to the Canadian people who are about ready to throw him out of office because he's been a total disaster.
The U.S. and Canada have traded shots over trade across the border over decades, but some analysts question the aim of these tariffs. They threaten to fray bonds forged since the mid-1930s in the aftermath of the Great Depression.
I think it is very hard to find any kind of economic rationale for the tariffs on Mexico and Canada. These are the US's biggest trading partners. In some sense, they're also its closest allies.
Mexico has vowed to retaliate, but China, facing a 10% tariff, has been more cautious. For now, it says it will challenge the tariffs at the World Trade Organization. Other countries, too, are now bracing to see who might be next on the tariff list.
We don't know whether this is a limited action just focused on these countries, or whether this is the start of a broader trade war that Trump intends to engage in with the rest of the world and with the UK and Europe, for example.
It's going to affect beer, okay? Most of it, Corona here, comes from Mexico.
But the Democrats, with a show and tell, insist the tariffs will hurt Americans too.
Stop these tariffs. You campaigned on lowering prices. You campaigned on this wallet.
Many Republicans say Americans chose Trump because he pledged to put America first, and they say that's what he's doing with these tariffs. Todd.
All right, CTV's Geneviève Beauchemin, Washington. Well, this story is what many Canadians are talking about. One big and immediate takeaway, anger over what many see as Trump's bullying of a close ally. There are growing calls to buy Canadian, boycott American products to send a message. And our cameras caught up with some people on both sides of the border.
They're putting a tariff on us, and then now, we have to fight back. We all have to do our part to support Canada. So from now on, I guess I'll buy Canadian whiskey.
Yeah, if I have a cheap Canadian option, I would definitely go for it.
I think, yeah, initially it might not work out so well, but if we get our energy secured, if we get our energy down, I think it'll be all right for the long run.
And more reaction to the president. Trump generating a lot of bad blood with basketball fans at an NBA game in Toronto today. Toronto Raptors fans booing the American national anthem at a game between the hometown team and the LA Clippers. That was followed by cheers when "O Canada" rang out. It came on the heels of a similar incident in Ottawa on Saturday night, where hockey fans in the stands jeered the Star-Spangled Banner ahead of a game between the Senators and the Minnesota Wild. Another angle to this story, cross-border tourism. Some towns that are dependent on American tourists are ready to hit the panic button. American visitors spend billions of dollars in Canada, mostly because their dollar stretches further here. But that could change. Kamal Karamali has more from Niagara Falls.
Another Sunday shopping spree for hundreds at Niagara's outlet mall, but the feeling here a little bit different today, with tariff threats hanging over everything.
It's rough. Yeah. Everybody's broken.
There are Canadians looking to grab some goods before prices go up.
You never know how much it's going to go up or what it's going to impact, right?
A lot of shoes.
And then there are the Americans crossing the border, trying to score a deal while they still can. Phil and Sherry Clock drove up from Buffalo.
And did you find you guys got a better bang for your buck up here?
Yes.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing our credit card statements.
The weaker Canadian dollar means American money goes much further up here, but after the tariffs hit and goods get more expensive, many might not be willing to make the journey.
We'd have to see how much it affected the overall spend.
The Niagara region brings in more than 13 million tourists, spending over $2 billion every year, many of them American. Now, with the ongoing tariff war, there's a growing concern Americans will limit their visits north, leaving businesses struggling to survive.
All of these other things that cause this disruption means that less people visit our community.
A feeling shared across all Canadian border towns and regions near the U.S.
The United States has basically declared an economic war on us. They can't roll tanks across the border. This is the next best thing.
But talk to Americans, and not all are deterred from visiting their neighbors.
No, if we want to spend the money, I guess we're going to spend the money.
Especially with views like this, who could resist?
Yeah, it's really nice. I will come here in the summers for sure.
Even if it does cost a little more.
Thank you.
Safe travel.
Thank you.
Kamel Karamali, CTV News, Niagara Falls.
All right, so we know the Trudeau government is promising to target many American products in retaliation. Federal ministers, the Conservatives, provincial premiers, all weighing in today. We are seeing a remarkable amount of unity to defend Canada against Trump. CTV's Jeremy Sharon has that from Ottawa.
Facing dueling tariffs, two longtime allies tonight in the early days of an historic trade war with no clear escape.
I'm very pessimistic that by Tuesday we can get out.
Speaking with Vashi Kapelos on CTV's Question Period, Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc indicated Canada could be unable to escape the tariffs for weeks still.
My conversations with Howard Lutnick and others in the administration tell me that perhaps in March there's a window again, but most of this is so unpredictable.
Canada retaliated with its own tariffs Saturday night, targeting $155 billion in American goods in two phases, starting Tuesday with $30 billion in U.S. products, followed by another $125 billion in American goods 21 days later. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre condemned President Trump's tariffs today and had this message for the Prime Minister.
Put aside partisan interests and recall Parliament. It is insane that in this great crisis, Parliament is shut down.
Liberal Party leadership candidates released a joint statement on the tariffs today, vowing that no matter who's elected, the next Liberal leader will stand up against the unjust tariffs.
Now that this fight is here, a fight that we did not ask for, we have to stick up for ourselves.
Meanwhile, premiers are retaliating with their own measures, including targeting American liquor. Manitoba, British Columbia, Ontario, and Nova Scotia have all vowed to pull U.S. alcohol from the shelves.
Now, the federal government is preparing a stimulus package to help impacted businesses, but we don't yet know specifics. Senior government officials said today revenues from retaliatory tariffs will be used to help with that financial relief, but they wouldn't say how much they expect to bring in. Todd?
Jeremy Sharon in Ottawa. Thanks, Jeremy. We know the plan is a 25% tariff on all Canadian exports to the U.S. as of Tuesday. There is one exception, though, Canadian oil and gas, which face a 10% tariff. That would still have an impact on Alberta, which sends much of its oil south. In fact, Canada is the top oil exporter to the United States. CTV's Colton Prail now on the Energy Showdown.
Energy is a cornerstone of Canada-U.S. trade, and it's not avoiding tariff troubles. But facing a lower 10% tax, it's the energy sector that could escape with the least damage.
It will not have a significant effect as it might represent in some other sectors. But it is going to raise the price of goods and services for people in the United States.
Energy made up nearly a third of Canada's exported goods to the United States last year, with the Americans buying 4.3 million barrels of crude per day. Experts say the 10% tariff could mean an increase of $6 per barrel. That means gas prices could jump 20 to 25 cents per gallon in the U.S., but the increase may not be enough to change consumer behavior. Good news for Canadian producers, but that price increase won't help pressure Washington to lift the tariffs.
And as long as demand stays about the same, then those refiners require our oil, especially in the Midwest, and they won't have a way to avoid it, so they're going to have to pay the tariff.
Meanwhile, Ottawa says energy is still a possible retaliatory tool.
Part of our response, we are considering, with the provinces and territories, several non-tariff measures, including some relating to critical minerals, energy, procurement, and other partnerships.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith continues to strenuously oppose banning or taxing energy exports, while producers say this is a warning Canada needs to diversify its energy industry to be more resilient.
We're vulnerable. We were that way because we chose to be that way because we were reliable partners. And that's no longer the case.
One worry is Enbridge Line 5. It carries oil from Western Canada to Ontario, but travels through Michigan. The concern is that if Canada does limit energy exports, the U.S. could turn off the taps to southern Ontario. Todd.
CTV's Colton Prail tonight. Thanks, Colton. One of the big things to remember here is just how close the trading relationship is between Canada and the United States. Take a look at this map to give you a little bit of context. Of the 50 U.S. states, 36 of them do have Canada as their biggest trading partner, and that gives our country power and leverage in any trade war. Our U.S. political commentator Eric Ham is joining me now. And Eric, that map really speaks for itself. There is a lot of anger in Canada tonight over what Trump is doing. People obviously don't like getting pushed around. What exactly is the president's strategy here?
I don't think there is one. I think we just see that the president has implemented these tariffs on the United States' 3 largest trading partners, and many of those states that are key trading partners with Canada, many of them are going to feel the pain, the brunt. And of course, what's so ironic about all of this is many of these same people voted for Donald Trump because they thought he would actually reduce inflation and lower prices. And what we're seeing now is prices are about to go through the roof as a result of Donald Trump in office.
It can be challenging to cut through the noise, the threats, and the bluster coming from the White House these days. But a trade war is likely coming on Tuesday. What do you think Canada should do?
That trade war is already here. And I think what we're seeing now is Canada has already prepared with several phases of retaliatory tariffs to implement. And also, too, Canada is going to make sure to go after Donald Trump politically, targeting those red states as well to try to put more pressure on Donald Trump. We'll see if it works.
Hey, last question. Could we see U.S. senators, governors, congressmen and women exerting enough pressure, Eric, on Trump to get him to back down, or is that unlikely?
No, I think we will see a lot of closed-door meetings and behind-the-scenes talks with Donald Trump from a number of governors, senators, and others to try to get him to back down, because this is going to be deeply punishing. And while Donald Trump doesn't have any more races to run, many of these other politicians, they certainly do.
Well said. U.S. political commentator Eric Ham in Washington with his take. All right, and for a lot more coverage and analysis on this story, go to our website, ctvnews.ca. Up next for us, this.
AI, deepfakes,
bot technology is ramping up, and we are still living in the 1980s.
A dire warning about artificial intelligence and Canadian elections. Plus, the latest on 2 deadly back-to-back plane crashes in the United States. The hunt for answers continues tonight after 2 deadly plane crashes in just 2 days apart in the United States. Officials have identified 55 of the 67 people killed in Wednesday's mid-air collision in Washington, D.C. That collision between an American Airlines regional jet and a military helicopter.
We have some work to do as the salvage operation goes on, and we will absolutely stay here and search until such point as we have everybody.
Among the victims, Captain Rebecca Loback, who was co-piloting the helicopter, and a number of young skaters, their coaches, and family members on the airplane. Today, families of the victims gathered at the crash site. The U.S. Army is expected to begin lifting the wreckage from the river tomorrow. Data suggests the Army chopper was flying above a maximum allowed altitude of 200 feet for that route. The investigation is ongoing. And officials giving an update today on another horrific incident, the crash of a jet in Philadelphia on Friday. Investigators say there was no indication the plane was having trouble before it smashed into a suburban neighborhood. The medical plane plummeting near a mall shortly after takeoff with a child, 5 others on board. All died, along with a person on the ground who was in a car at the time. 22 others on the ground were injured. 3 are in critical condition. Syria's interim president made his first trip abroad today since the overthrow of the Assad regime. Ahmed al-Shara heading to Saudi Arabia to meet with that country's de facto leader, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Observers say making Saudi Arabia his first destination signals that Syria may be trying to distance itself from its longtime ally in the region, Iran. All right, still ahead, the political disinformation that's dominating the digital world. The threat to our democracy as Canadians anticipate an early election. Disinformation is an existential threat to democracy. That was the dire warning coming from a final report on foreign interference that was released late last month. With a provincial election underway in Ontario right now and the likelihood of a spring federal election, the risks are high, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence. CTV's Judy Trin explains.
Deciphering truth on social media is getting more difficult.
But the greatest threat, the one that I believe threatens the very existence of our democracy, is disinformation.
The commissioner's warning comes after investigating foreign interference. Shadowy states or individuals have the capability to weaponize artificial intelligence to undermine elections on a massive scale.
The deep fakes and the faked voices and the images of people that never really happened. That kind of generative AI tool can be used to create content that seems like it's real. It can be used to create chaos.
World leaders in a rock band, obviously fake, but others are not as easy to detect. After a visit by Pierre Poilievre last summer, hundreds of posts on social media surfaced praising Poilievre. They were not real people. The Conservatives say they don't use bots. Researchers later found that it was one person using artificial intelligence to train an army of bots.
You can imagine what a foreign government could do, or what a really nefarious actor could do, or a political campaign themselves could do.
NDP Charlie Angus currently represents Kirkland Lake. He's not running again. He's particularly worried about the social media platform X.
Mr. Elon Musk.
Billionaire Elon Musk has posted about Canadian politics. His mother was born in Saskatchewan. His company X has more than 600 million active users. Musk fired the fact-checkers that removed wrong, misleading, and abusive posts. Now other social media companies, like Meta, are doing the same.
We are sleepwalking, I think, to what could be a very disastrous effect from an election that will be uglier than anything we've ever seen, where AI, deep fakes, bot technology is ramping up, and we are still living in the 1980s.
Parliament was considering 2 bills, one that offered Canadians some protection from bot networks and another that increased monitoring of political activity before elections. The legislation hit a dead end when Parliament was prorogued.
What can we do to stop it? Really not much. I mean, except question the information you're getting.
Commissioner Hogue has recommended that the federal government force social media companies to label their altered content, but that's unlikely to happen before the next election. That's because all the opposition party leaders are intent on voting non-confidence when Parliament resumes. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
All right, still ahead an early spring or 6 more weeks of winter. Groundhog Day predictions across the country coming up. And finally for us, today is Groundhog Day, a tradition that sees furry prognosticators give a preview of what lies ahead, either 6 more weeks of winter or an early spring. And based on what we're hearing, you may want to keep your shovel handy. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth has more from Halifax.
Some might question the scientific validity of this particular exercise.
Each year, on the second day of the second month, people gather to cheer on Shubenacadie Sam, Nova Scotia's celebrity groundhog.
Worth getting up at 6 a.m. to be here.
Groundhog Day means different things to different people, including a reference to the 1993 hit movie. Legend has it, if a groundhog sees its shadow, it means 6 more weeks of winter ahead. This oversized crowd braved the frigid temperatures around -20 to watch Sam emerge from a long winter's nap. The tension was palpable.
3, 2, 1.
Sam's shadow was visible.
That's what Canada's all about. You got to enjoy winter, so 6 more weeks, I guess.
Shubenacadie Sam is actually Samantha, a female who assumed these Groundhog Day duties back in 2021. Sam was not alone. Both Nova Scotia's Lucy the Lobster and Quebec's Fred La Marmotte also saw their shadows.
De Fred La Marmotte du Québec à Val d'Espoir.
The same goes for Puxatawney Phil in Pennsylvania.
Get ready for 6 more weeks of winter this year.
However, in Ontario, Wyerton Willie determined there was no shadow, which means
we will have an early spring.
Depending on where you live and what you're willing to believe, spring may be fast approaching, or we may be in for a long, hard, cold winter. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Shubenacadie, Nova Scotia.
And that's going to do it for us tonight. For ongoing coverage of the Canada-U.S. trade war, watch CTV News channel. I'm Todd Vanderheyden. On behalf of Heather Butts and all of us here at the CTV National News, thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your night and a great week ahead.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.